Hey there, it's Mitzi. Welcome to my channel. So today is all about my TBR spin. If you follow my channel, you know that I am spinning a wheel every month to decide on 2 books for my TBR for that month. So for September, I chose 2 books using the spinner, and I'm going to talk about those 2 books, and then I'm going to spin the wheel for 2 books to help me decide on 2 books for October. So the first book that was on the wheel for the spinner was a gifted book. I always choose from my gifted shelf first because I want to get those books read. I don't have that many left. I'm looking over to see. I don't have that many left on there, so I'm trying to get those done. And so I always do one for the shelf number 1, which is the gifted books. So for that shelf for September, the book chosen was Time and Again by Jack Finney. And one of you, one of my subscribers, Mary, gave me this. So thank you to Mary for sending this book to me. This book was published in 1970. And this is a time travel book. And I also did not realize it, but when I was recording it in my Goodreads, I noticed that it was part of a series. I think there's another book after this. So I can actually count this for series September, and it's sci-fi since it is time travel. So I thought, well, that works perfectly because I was not planning on reading a sci-fi for series September, but this works for that prompt. So yay for me for reading this one. This book, it's about this man who is works for an advertising agency, and he's a sketch artist. And he's approached by someone in the government for this secret project that they want him to participate in because of his talents. He's very detail oriented as a sketch artist, and he notices a lot of things because of that. So they talk to him and interview him, and he gets through this process where he's chosen to actually go back in time. And what they want him to do is go back in time and sketch everything that he sees and everything, be very detailed with recording what he sees. But he's not to do anything to interact or anything to mess up history. He's just to be an observer. Well, he has a girlfriend at the time that had this mysterious letter that was written in 1882, and there's this mystery behind this letter. So he's like, okay, well, I will do this. I will, go back in time, do this assignment for 1882 if I can go back to this time, because maybe we can solve this mystery. So that's what he does. At the beginning of this story, it's very detailed, minute by minute, of what's going on. And so for me, it started kind of slow because of that. It was, okay, I'm observing this, and there's actually even illustrations in this book, which I found to be pretty interesting too. I've never seen a novel done quite like this. So that was interesting, and I did like that about it. But it was very kind of almost like an investigator CSI sort of feeling to it, where it's just recording. I did this, I saw this is what it looked like, and very detailed with the descriptions as he's looking around, which is his talent. He's very detail oriented, of course, because he's a sketch artist, and that's what they wanted him for, and that's his assignment. So I can understand why they did that, or why Jack Finney, the author, did that. However, for me, it just was so slow. It slowed it down, and it took me out of the story a little bit. But once we were in 1882, things started happening, and the plot thickened, and I was really invested in the story after that. It really goes fast after you're there in, the time slip part. And I really enjoyed it. And I'm not going to tell you anything about that part because that's where the plot thickens. But there is this twist at the end that I did not see coming. It was a complete surprise how this ended and the twist at the end of this. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. The only thing I didn't like was that slow beginning, but I do understand why Jack Finney had to kind of do it that way, because it was showing us what this character was, how he was interacting at the beginning of the story. Not only that though, one other thing that bothered me was there was some swearing in here that I didn't think was necessary. And it was several times with, it's these men and they're in the workplace and it's supposed to be, they're these government people that are swearing. And I didn't like that. Now, it didn't happen that often or I wouldn't have been able to read it because when it gets to be too much swearing, I'm like, okay, I'm done with this. But there is some swearing in this and that turned me off, of course. And it is written to me in a sort of a masculine way, if that is a thing. That's how I felt reading this. But I did enjoy it and I thought that it was high adventure once he was in 1882. So if you like a time slip and also a little romance, I didn't talk about that part, but if you like a time slip novel with a little romance and it takes place in 1882, you might enjoy this one. So thank you to Mary for sending this. I'm glad that I read that one. The next one that the spinner chose for me was from my historical fiction shelf, and that was Love on the Line by Deanne Gist. And I loved this book. This is historical fiction. Of course, I love historical fiction because that's why I have a whole shelf of it. And it's about a girl named Georgie who is a telephone switch operator. It was so fun. It was just a great read. I couldn't put it down. What happens in this one is Georgie works for, she's the switchboard operator. So, there's all the gossip in the town and she's switching through the, the telephone conversation. So that was cute about it. But there's a man that moves to town, Luke, who is a Texas Ranger, and he comes to town undercover. No one knows he is a Texas Ranger because he's on the hunt for this notorious gang who is robbing the trains. And there's this gray area with this infamous train robber because Luke is coming to try to find out what's going on and investigate to find this gang and arrest them. But the people in town are they see him more as a Robin Hood. And so they don't really see him as the bad guy in the train robberies. Even though, because he hasn't hurt any children or women or anything. Well, of course he's bad. He's robbing the train. So Luke comes to town undercover and works as a telephone line operator with Georgie. So they meet that way and they of course have to work together. So the story goes on from there and I highly recommend it. Now, I will say that one of the reasons I really loved this book was all of the birds mentioned. So whenever the birds were mentioned, I absolutely loved it. But I will say this, when I went to record that I had finished this book on Goodreads, I noticed there were some that had, given it like 2 stars, and I thought, well, why didn't you like it? Because, I loved it so much. And I noticed that in the ones that I read, I only read a couple of them, they both said that Georgie and her bird obsession was irritating. They did not like the book because of that. They found it to be irritating. Because what happens is she loves the birds so much, and she's such a bird lover, that she is upset with this hat maker in town because he's using bird parts for his hats. So she, of course, is upset because she thinks you are killing birds for fashion. And so she's, wanting to take a stand against that. So there is a subplot to this about her fight for the birds, which I loved. But apparently not everybody would love that because not everybody's a bird lover like me. So for me, this was the perfect historical fiction. I love the whole telephone operator thing. I love that he was an undercover Texas Ranger. And I love the birds. So anyway, just know that she is obsessed with birds in this. So if you love birds and historical fiction, you might love this one too. But I thought it was fantastic and I do recommend this one. So I had some great reads for September. This one I was able to use for Series September because it is the first in a series. I didn't know that. And it was a sci-fi, so I could use it for that. And then I was able to get one of my historical fiction. I've had this book for quite some time. And they both were great reads. So yay for that. Now I'm going to grab my laptop so that I can spin the wheel for October. Okay, for October, I'm going to first spin the wheel for my gifted shelf because I always want to spin for that first. So I'm going to spin the wheel and see what the spinner chooses for October. So here we go. We're going to spin the wheel, and the book is Over What Hill. Okay, so Over What Hill is my first choice for October. Okay, so I set up the spinner for 1 through 6 because that's how many shelves I spin for. The first shelf is gifted, the second is classics, number 3 is nonfiction, number 4 is Newbery Award winners, and number 5 is historical fiction. I forgot number 6. And then number 6 is authors that I'm trying to read all of, as well as series that I'm trying to read. So let's spin the wheel to see what shelf I will be reading from for October. So I already have my gifted. Now we're going to spin the wheel for what shelf I'll be reading from for my second choice. And the shelf is number 4. So number 4 is a Newbery winner. So I'm going to spin for one of the Newbery winners that I already have a copy of on my shelf. All right, hang on just a second. Let me pull that up. Okay, I had to change my wheel a minute. So these are the Newbery books that are on my shelf that I still need to read. So let's spin the wheel and see which Newbery I'll be reading for October. And it is Kira. I guess that's how you pronounce that. Okay, so let me grab those 2 books. Okay, so the book was Over What Hill, but here's the thing. I'm thinking that the first one is Out to Pasture. So Elizabeth over at Lizzie Faye Loves Books, she stopped by, I think it was during the summer. She was taking a road trip and she came by my house and we went book shopping. And she had told me we were looking at some books and she said, oh, you need to pick this book up. So I picked up a book, but then we went to Second and Charles, and I'm thinking that Elizabeth bought this book and I bought this one, the Over the Hill. And I'm thinking the reason was because Elizabeth was like, I'm going to buy you this book because this one's the first one and you need to read it first. I'm pretty sure that's what the story was. So I'm going to talk to Elizabeth today and find out which one I'm supposed to read first. But anyway, the books are Out to Pasture and Over What Hill, and they're written by Effie Leland Wilder. And I think that, if I recall correctly, this was, Elizabeth said she was like in her 80s when she wrote these, but that they were great books and I would enjoy them. And I looked at the page count and it's like 177 pages. So they're not long at all. I probably could get both read in October. We'll see. I've got Victober and those books are a lot longer. But I'm going to read at least the first one in this series for the TBR spin. And then the next one was a Newbery, and it's Kira by Cynthia. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name. I'm sorry. But this is a Newbery winner that I haven't read. And you know what? I know nothing about this book. I've heard of the book, of course, because it's a Newbery winner. And I had picked it up because I'm trying to read through all of the Newbery Award winners, the main medal winner of for each year. So this is one I haven't read, and so I look forward to reading that. So I have... I think Out to Pasture is the first one, and Kira. So if you read any of these, let me know in the comments so we can chat there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.